All right. Let's see. We should be live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to each and every one of you to another installment of The Stefan Show. Or at least that's what I'm calling it for now. The Stefan Report, The Stefan Show. I don't know yet. We'll figure it out as we go along. I go back and forth on the naming scheme of the show. Gordon, how you doing, sir? CR, how you doing? I hope that all of you have had a wonderful week. It is, of course, Thursday, which means that in one more day we'll have weekend, in which case we can sort of kick back, relax, maybe have a braai, and see what the weekend has on offer. South Africa is nothing if not exciting to live in. It's not great, to be fair, because a lot of the excitement is sort of, will we survive? Will there be another dawn? Uh, but at the end of the day, it is why we're here. And hopefully, throughout the next hour, hour and a half, I can make sense of what is happening in the country so that you can feel a little bit more equipped. And if you see moves happening throughout the country, you see the ANC doing things, and you're not entirely sure, you can remember the things that we've spoken about, and you can understand what the ANC is ultimately up to. So I truly hope that this will be informative, but also entertaining. And as always, I will be taking questions from you guys, and we'll just have a good time. The Good Shepherd, how you doing, sir? All right. So first, let's quickly catch everyone up. Those of you who have not been here for some time, and maybe you don't know anything about what's going on. And I know that sounds strange, but believe me, it's not actually that strange. I've had just over the last 2 days, I've had probably close to 12 or 13 people ask me, what's going on with this Pala Pala thing? And I'm like, what do you mean what's going on with it? And like, I saw Pala Pala stuff, but I don't really know what that is. And I don't blame people for that. Fundamentally, I was having a conversation with one of the viewers who ran into me outside the Spar close to where I live. And we were sort of talking, and they mentioned something that I find it encouraging, and I'm glad that I'm able to do this. But I know a lot of you have full time jobs, right? And I know a lot of you don't really have the time to dive into every little nook and cranny of the South African political system. Let's be real, a lot of it is boring. Most of you, like myself, hate listening to Cyril Ramaphosa. And what's even worse than listening to Cyril Ramaphosa is watching things like parliamentary committees. And so you rely on people like me to do that and to give you feedback on what is actually happening in the country. So I don't blame people for not knowing. But fundamentally, what you guys need to know, just broad strokes, Pala Pala is the president's farm. There's been some negotiation or some speculation that the president isn't the sole owner of Pala Pala, and that there's actually some Afrikaans businessmen that own the farm alongside him, which, by the way, I would not be surprised by. It would not surprise me if there are white businessmen in South Africa that are in cahoots with the ANC. And I guess let's just start there. Why would a white businessman like Rupert, for example, why would Johan Rupert be in cahoots with the ANC? The ANC has destroyed the economy of South Africa. They've destroyed the country as a whole. So you would argue that someone like Johan Rupert would benefit from someone like the DA being in charge. And yet, when we go to the White House and President Trump is asking questions of the South African delegation, Johan Rupert decides to throw Steenhuisen under the bus for how they are governing in the Western Cape, rather than throw Cyril Ramaphosa under the bus. Because, I mean, if we're going to talk about bad governance, the DA is doing a stellar job in the Western Cape compared to literally everywhere else. Like, anywhere you want to live. And it's also funny that Johan Rupert lives here in the Western Cape. But of course, he decided to attack Steenhuisen for the DA's government here in the Western Cape. So why is this? What is Johan Rupert actually, what is he up to? What is the plan? Well, in order to understand that, we have to go back to 1994. And you have to understand a couple of things. First, The end of apartheid was never actually the choice of the Afrikaner or the white man broadly. This was not our choice. The people didn't talk about ending apartheid, even though the people didn't like apartheid. And it's important that you understand this. A lot of people didn't like the apartheid in terms of its application. The way that it was applied for a lot of people felt unfair. And there's actually a lot of credibility to that argument. That doesn't mean that the majority of Afrikaners wanted an end to the system in the way that the system came to an end. Because a lot of people did have questions. A lot of people did say, look, boys, we are a clear minority in this country. If we just suddenly open up the country and now everyone can vote, we will never have enough votes in this country to ever again have any control over the political economic future of this country, which seems like a very bad place to be. And so a lot of promises were made, right? Promises that were made on behalf of a plan that was already set in motion. So, for example, when the National Party promised the voters that there's going to be safeguards put in place in the Constitution to ensure that Afrikaners will always have a voice in South Africa, that was a lie. The plan to end apartheid wasn't even the National Party's plan. It was the plan of very large businessmen like Johan Rupert. These men wanted to make money. They wanted to make more money. The problem, South Africa is being sanctioned. These companies that exist that would like to export to the rest of the world cannot export to the rest of the world because we're under sanction. The rest of the world will not trade with us. And so these men start with an enormous amount of psyops. And if you don't believe me, you can actually just go back to like the early 1990s, late 1880s or 1980s, and you will see the amount of news articles and headlines that were just constantly harping on about the end of South Africa unless we do something about this. People were effectively sort of pushed into it by fear, or through fear. They were pushed into this idea that there was only one other way out, and that was the democratization of South Africa in its entirety. Right? So, okay, this happens. But also on the side of the ANC, there's an interesting thing that happens. You see, because these businessmen, and for now, I won't even necessarily say they're part of an organization, even though I do believe that they are. Let's just say that these businessmen did not just negotiate with the National Party. The businessmen also negotiated with the ANC. You see, the ANC had to understand that there are a couple of rules by which they're going to have to play if they want to truly be free. If they want to be in charge of South Africa, there are rules that will have to be followed. And so the ANC has to adopt the Rainbow Nation. The idea is that the ANC promises that they will govern a raceless South Africa, where race is no longer used as any sort of metric. And this will allow the country to open up, and it will allow for all of these businessmen to get really, really rich. We know that this was never the plan of the ANC because the ANC only did that from 1994 to 1997. From 1994 to 1997, the ANC follows a business model of reconciliation. We have to forgive each other. We have to come together, take hands, and sing Kumbaya. In 1997, when the ANC finally gets Thabo Mbeki as now the next guy that's going to step up to the plate, the ANC suddenly starts to change from reconciliation to transformation. You see, because these businessmen made a small oopsie. They made a tiny little mistake. They thought that they could negotiate with the communists. They thought that the ANC would see reason. Look, boys, you're going to be in charge. You're going to be able to make money. You're going to be able to bring freedom to your people because they genuinely thought that the ANC cared about the freedom of the black people in South Africa. You're going to be able to do all of this. But in order for us to allow you to do all of these things, you also have to allow us to make a lot of money. Right? This is the deal. But they didn't quite understand, and the National Party ran into this exact same problem because if you guys don't remember, in 1994, the ANC is not the official ruling party of South Africa. Instead, South Africa is governed by a ding 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 government of national unity. The ANC didn't have to appoint a government of national unity because they had won fair and square. All the votes went to the ANC. But they did that because that was part of the negotiation. The National Party was supposed to govern alongside the ANC for a few election cycles so that they could sort of teach the ANC, and Thabo Mbeki actually spoke about this. There's an interview of Thabo Mbeki saying that one of the mistakes they made was kicking out the National Party before they even had an opportunity to really learn how do you govern this country, right? Like Thabo Mbeki said this openly. So the NP is eventually worked out, pushed out, and there they go. They go from being the National Party to the new National Party. And then, of course, eventually they just sort of fizzle out and die. And you ultimately have a lot of National Party members that actually defect and join the ANC. These were all of the people that were part of the globalist agenda. The idea that these guys want to make money, the ANC get to have some power, but we are going to make money. The ANC, this idea of the Rainbow Nation is thrust upon the ANC, and you see it now. The idea of the Rainbow Nation is also thrust upon the people of South Africa. Julius Malema has said multiple times that they blame Nelson Mandela for not giving them justice in 1994. You see, because the majority of black people that supported the ANC weren't interested in reconciliation. They were interested in justice. Now, 32 years on, that has definitely changed. The majority of black people don't hate white people. The majority of black people don't really care about making white people pay. There is a very large minority, however, that do want white people to pay and still are sort of driven by this politics of vengeance. But that's not the majority. Our problem in South Africa isn't a racial hatred problem. Our problem in South Africa is a communist problem. And I'm going to get to this. All of this plays into it. But okay, so now you have this system that's been thrust upon this country where these white businessmen who, trust me, do not care about you or me. This is why Johan Rupert stands at the White House and effectively says, what are you talking about? I live on a farm and I never even lock my doors. And then actual people go to his farm and realize that this man has 24-hour security that literally patrol his entire farm. He lives under massive or behind massive gates and massive fences. So clearly he's not the ordinary person, right? That you and I, how we would live on a farm. But anyways, this is how we get to this moment, Ramaphosa. You have to understand, the ANC, this Rainbow Nation, this dream of everyone, I mean, this has never been something that they care about. Right? This has been thrust upon them. Now we get to Phala Phala. So Phala Phala is the farm of President Cyril Ramaphosa. Phala Phala is supposed to be a cattle farm where, you know, we make, I guess he sells these very expensive cows, not entirely sure what for. Now, I'll tell you guys that I know a lot of very large cattle farmers. I grew up in a farming community, so I know a very, very large number of very wealthy cattle farmers. I don't know a single one of them that at any point in time has 580,000 US dollars in cash lying around. Ever. I've never seen that. Right, that is a new one for me. Like, these guys do have money, but not the kind that just a couple of mil in cash lying around, especially not in US dollars, because it is illegal. You can't actually transact in South Africa in US dollars. So if the president had these dollars and it was somehow legal for him to have these dollars, the illegality of it would literally be the case, the fact that he accepted dollars for payment for cows. You can't accept dollars as payment in South Africa. South Africa's payment medium is rand, as laid out by our Reserve Bank. Right? You have to exchange those dollars for rands, and then you can transact your business. So that's already a bit of a weird thing. For example, when people from America donate money to me, that money goes through the Reserve Bank, gets converted into rands, and I get the rands. I don't get the dollars. It would be nice if I got the dollars, but I don't get the dollars. Anyway, so the president is caught with 580,000 US dollars just hanging about on his farm. He then uses his own Secret Service and police force to secretly and sneakily recover the funds after a robbery happened on his farm. The police finds out about it, and the police effectively does nothing. But now it's national news. Everyone finds out about it. And this is where we get to 2022. After an independent report from Parliament, they find that there is enough evidence to actually open an impeachment committee against the president. One that has now already happened, by the way. They settled on a 32-member committee or 31-member committee. The ANC has 9 members in the committee, and then every other party. So it's interesting, but nevertheless, right? That committee has now been moving forward. Although I don't know if they're going to start their work yet, because we're still waiting to find out, can Parliament continue with their proceedings while the president is challenging the report in court. We'll figure all of that out in due time. Hopefully by next week we'll have some kind of answer on what exactly that is, because any of the things that I've looked at, no one really knows, because South Africa, this is the first time this has happened in South African history. We've never had a president impeached. So we don't really know what the precedent for this is. You know, what's the precedent for impeaching the president of South Africa? We don't quite know, but we'll figure it out. But all right, so Phala Phala happens in 2022. The ANC abuses their majority. This has been confirmed. You can watch my video on this. I did one yesterday or the day before yesterday. And the ANC abuses their majority to vote down the report. And the ANC actually thinks this is the end of it. They don't have to worry anymore. Sadly, it's not the end of it. EFF starts to make some noise, and I do actually believe that if you were to go dig, you'll figure out that the EFF didn't just do this because they really care about justice, because there's something interesting about the EFF's application at the Constitutional Court. The EFF waits 14 months after 2022 to actually go to the Constitutional Court and challenge the voting down of the report. Even the Constitutional Court admitted this was too long. You can't wait that long in order to bring the case. But the Constitutional Court did say they'll set that aside, and it won't have any bearing on their actual findings. But still, that's interesting, right? And that tells me the EFF was more than happy to let Cyril Ramaphosa get away with Phala Phala, because either they thought that they would be able to get into power. That might be one thing. Or perhaps it had something to do with the GNU and the GNU negotiations, or perhaps some kind of business deal. I haven't looked into this enough yet. I need to string together the timeline specifically here. But 14 months would put us dangerously close to the last elections in 2024. So it might actually have something to do with that, because the EFF didn't get into the GNU. They felt slighted, and now they said, we'll come after Cyril Ramaphosa with everything we've got. Anyways, this brings us to today. The Constitutional Court on Friday ruled that Cyril Ramaphosa should have been impeached, or at least the impeachment proceedings should have gone ahead, and Cyril Ramaphosa said he's going to take them to court. That's not the end of it. Cyril Ramaphosa's future as president of South Africa is done. I've already explained this multiple times. Cyril Ramaphosa, by the end of next year, is out of office. But I'll actually explain to you, hopefully in today's video, or in today's live stream, how that's not the end of it. Well, that's not when it will end. It's already over. Cyril Ramaphosa is now only a mascot of the ANC. And what exactly the ANC is up to, we'll also get to. Now, first, let me show you this. So yesterday, the NEC of the ANC, this is their top brass, meets about the events that had transpired, about the stuff for Phala Phala, the Constitutional Court ruling, and all the rest of it. Important to note, the NEC meets without Cyril Ramaphosa. Because yesterday, Cyril Ramaphosa is wasting his time at the BlackRock Infrastructure Investment Conference in Cape Town. Remember what I told you guys about 1994 and Johan Rupert and those guys negotiating? That's BlackRock. You want to talk about globalists? You want to talk about people who care about this sort of global world order? That's BlackRock. So the president of South Africa is meeting BlackRock. Do you guys know that BlackRock is the largest investment firm in the world? And it's an American firm. In fact, there is enough evidence to show that the invasion of Afghanistan was at the behest of BlackRock. BlackRock made millions going in because they were the ones who got to fix all of the infrastructure in Afghanistan and in Iraq. You want to talk about a president that has suspicions about America and doesn't like American imperialism? BlackRock is the quintessential sort of poster child for American imperialism. Because where BlackRock goes, it enslaves nations to this globalist imperialist agenda. But of course, the agenda is communist in nature. It's where stakeholder capitalism comes in. And so this is where the president is. He's running he's running his role as the cheerleader of the ANC, whilst the ANC is meeting to decide his future. So before we get going, before we continue, what do you guys think was discussed at yesterday's NEC meeting? If you were to sum it up in a sentence, what do you guys think was discussed there? The Crypto Noob, geseënde Hemelvaartdag vir jou ook. Bridges, how you doing? Raymond, how you doing? Saint, how you doing? Bushveld Bot, how you doing? Anonymous person, how you doing? Jaguar, how you doing? JS Afri, how you doing? Plankton, how you doing? I hope you guys are super well. Michael, how you doing? Rowan, USA, how you doing, sir? Does any of you have any guesses as to what you think was discussed at yesterday's NEC meeting? Or shall I just continue? Because it seems like chat's taking a break at the moment. All right. ANC probably discussed how they can get out of trouble. Don, how to kick him out is what was discussed. Yes and no, but not so much kicking out. I don't think that's what the ANC is up to now. Let me explain. So all of you know by now, and I've made these videos before, and I'm not the only person that says this. So this isn't something super new, right? To think of the ANC, you have to understand African communism. Now, by now, I hope that most of you understand communism. I've made multiple live streams and videos on communism, what it stands for, what it is. The interesting thing about communism is that it never looks the same everywhere. So, for example, you look at communism as Karl Marx envisioned it. Karl Marx's envisioning of communism was the idea that the workers would control the system and the means of production. It was a pure form of communism, if you will. The communists in Russia are all academics. These are all highly trained, highly educated individuals. And they come up with a brand new system, right? It's communist in nature, but instead they call it scientific socialism. The idea here is that because they're so intelligent, they believe that they can mathematically run the economy of Russia. It can be a mathematical equation. Algorithms and such can decide how much bread do you need. Algorithms can decide how many pants and how many shirts do you need. Algorithms can decide how factories should operate and what kind of quotas need to be hit and all the rest of it, right? So it's a centralized system, but it's very much unique to the Russian people. It's how the Russian people have pretty much always felt comfortable operating. And so this is just a natural extension of that. But then you look at communism, for example, and how it plays out in China, and it's completely different again. So communism in China almost becomes a Confucian communism, right? Where it sort of merges the teachings of Confucius with the teachings of Karl Marx. And what is birthed from that is stakeholder communism, or as the World Economic Forum calls it, because communism is a dirty word, stakeholder capitalism. So here, the idea is rather that you have the emperor, the state, and the emperor oversees the administration of the state. Very Confucian. The people are largely left to do whatever the hell they want, provided that the people do not interfere with the emperor, the state. Right? And that's sort of the Chinese communist model. It doesn't look at all the way that the Soviet one looked. It doesn't operate the same. They're not scientifically trying to figure out exact quotas. That they leave to the people. You guys build your companies and do what you want. We'll have people in those companies to ensure that you don't do anything that challenges the state. And you see it from the previous owner of Alibaba. If you guys remember, I think it was Alibaba. The guy, what's his name again? Oh, he was sort of like the Elon Musk of China for a bit. And he said something in an interview that was quite critical of the CCP. Jack Ma, that's the one. Thank you very much, Dylan. Jack Ma, sort of like the Chinese Elon Musk, he says something slightly critical of the Chinese Communist Party and he disappears. For a year and a half, no one hears about him. And then he reappears. But now he's been taught. There are things that you can say and things that you can't. And for one thing, if you are a businessman in China, you don't say anything about politics. Politics is the emperor's realm. Businessmen can only operate provided that they don't interfere with the emperor's realm. And so that's sort of their version. South Africa has a different type of communism. It is an African communism. And the African communism comes from the history of Africa. Africa is made up of thousands and thousands of little tribes, and all of these little tribes have chiefs. The chief is the leader. The chief decides what the tribe gets to do and what the tribe must do. The chief is in charge of everything. Now, the chief, for the most part, is he's sort of like a benevolent chief, for the most part. Most of their chiefs are benevolent, right? They're not trying to oppress their people, but there's a very clear, the chief makes the decisions, the chief gets the first of all the hunting goods, the chief gets the first of all the women, the chief is the chief. And so, communism in South Africa looks very similar. That's the ANC. That's the ANC's main vehicle. That's how they view the world. They are all communists. But you'll be mistaken if you believe that all of the members of the ANC have the same goal. Right? They all want communism. But the way they view that communism and the way they want to achieve that communism, that looks very different. So where is the overlap? Where do they agree? They believe, all of them, that the state should be the chief. The state is in charge of everything. They believe, all of them, that the state has a right to riches. So if you're working for the government, it's not okay for you to be poor, right? You can't be poor and be the president of the country. What kind of world would that be? Because from their perspective, the president, the chief, you can't be the chief of the village and live in a shack. Go look at the most poor areas in this country. You'll have people who live in shanty towns, shacks falling apart, and then you look at the king's house. In this township that is falling apart, look at where the king lives. The king lives in luxury. I knew a guy who, in Limpopo, he worked for me. He was not Shona. They're sort of, they're a smaller tribe derived from the Zulu tribe. I'm trying to remember now what they were called. but they speak their language is very similar to Zulu because they were once Zulu, but they sort of broke away, and they share a lot of similarity with the Zulu culture because they were once part of it. It could have been Ndebele, but I don't think it was. He said the actual name a few times actually, but I genuinely can't remember it now. But it's in Limpopo, right? They have this village of theirs. Now, everyone in that village is dirt poor. Chonga, that's the one. That's the one. Paul, thank you very much. Chonga. He's Tonga. Chonga. Um, I think that's the one. Let me not speak too quickly, but that sounded very familiar. Chonga sounded very, very familiar. But okay, so in this village, all dirt poor. The king lives in a mansion. How does the king make his money? Where does the king's money come from? The people of the village pay him every single month. And I asked him, I said, what does the king do for you? And he's like, well, nothing. I'm like, well, why do you pay the king? And he said, because he's the king. He deserves to get our money because he's the king. And I'm like, but he doesn't do anything. He doesn't build roads or schools. And he's like, no. He's the king. As the king, you give him money. So that's important. It's important to understand that this is very African in its thinking. A lot of the African tribes in South Africa. Now, obviously, let me just be clear here. I'm not saying that all black people in South Africa still believe like that and agree like that, right? There are many black people that have already westernized a lot, where you might even get some black people who go, sure, there can be kings, but the king must do something, otherwise I'm not going to pay him, right? And then you do have black people that have just gone, no kings, thank you very much, we're good. We want people who actually govern, and we need to be able to see how they govern. But the communism of the ANC is that. Right? It's that mindset. And the king, therefore, the king can't live in a shack. The king must be rich. The king must have money. And so they all agree in a communism where the cadres must eat. Jacob Zuma said that. The cadres must eat. All the ANC agrees with that. So where do they differ? What is the exact... Where does the stream part? It's in how they get there. And for this, Nelson Mandela, Thabo Mbeki, and Cyril Ramaphosa are what is normally known in relative circles in South Africa as constitutionalists. Right? They'll often tell you these are the constitutionalists of the ANC. Zuma, Julius Malema, Paul Mashatile, these are what is known as the RET faction, or just more broadly, I believe, the radical faction. They want communism. They all want communism. That's the goal. It's how they get there. It's how they achieve that goal where they differ, where they have differences of opinion. So, what do the radicals want? Actually, let's start with what do the constitutional ones, because the problem with calling them the constitutionalists is that it sort of makes people think that these are the rule of law guys, which is completely wrong to think about it. They're not constitutionalists insofar as they care about the law and order and freedom and human rights and all that. That has nothing to do with it. It has to do with an observation of the world around them. What is the one thing that's been true of communist systems all throughout the world, throughout history? The Soviet Union pops up. There's a particular brand of communism. And what is the immediate thing that follows? The capitalist world, the free world, looks at the violence and the vitriol in that system, and it rejects it. It says, hell no. That's just way too wrong. Why? Because in order for these communists to actually get and gain power, they had to kill millions of their own people. Right? They had to violently suppress their people in order to take power. And the rest of the world looks at that and goes, what the hell are you guys doing? That's just wrong. China undergoes a similar thing under Mao. So Mao also does the very radical economic transformation thing where they kill millions of their own people. And what does the world do? It goes, hell no. The hell do you think you're doing? You're not allowed to do this. And it's only after Mao is replaced that they soften their approach, where they become almost constitutionalist. They're still killing a lot of their people, but it's no longer as open and brazen. It's now more structural, right? And so the Western world can sort of stomach that. That's not too bad of a problem. And then you'll have The End of History by Fukuyama. That creates a whole new thing where a lot of Western leaders are looking at the Chinese communist model and going, well, that seems great. We can have eternal power forever. But that's a whole different story. So the ANC observes throughout history. Cuba is another country where millions die in the revolution, and then the revolution continues to kill millions in order to hold on to their power, and Cuba gets rejected by the whole world and sanctioned. And so the ANC, at least the constitutionalists within the ANC, look at the history of communism and they say, no. We have to be careful. If we go violent, if we go radical, we're going to cut off South Africa. They look at Zimbabwe and they realize that Zimbabwe's mistake, the big mistake, was the radical land grabs. If Mugabe just didn't radically grab land, but instead did it sort of more constitutionally, the world would have said nothing and everything would have been fine. The problem was the radicalist. The fact that there were news organizations showing black mobs storming farms, beating white people off of their farms, that for the world was just too much. And so the constitutionalists look at all of this, they say, okay, slow but steady. That's why it's constitutionalist, right? That's why when President Cyril Ramaphosa speaks, he'll always talk about how the Constitution guarantees certain rights, ethical rights, right? And how South Africa must be a fair and equal and just society. These words don't mean what you think they mean, because through the equality in the Constitution, they are able to push their communism. Because remember, if I need to make everyone equal, I by definition have to instill massive government overreach and I have to step on people's rights because everyone has to be equal. At the same time, you have the radicalists or the radicals. The radicals don't really care, right? And these are your Zumas, these are your Julius Malemas, these are your Paul Mashatiles. They also want communism, and they also believe the chief must be rich and the cadres must eat. But they don't really care about the whole, what the world thinks or what the world doesn't think, because they have no actual loyalty to the ANC. Now, that's an incredible thing. And once you start to realize that, it all makes so much sense. What happens immediately after Jacob Zuma is ousted as president of South Africa? Remember, Jacob Zuma did incredible harm to the ANC. Jacob Zuma nearly destroyed this country. And yet the ANC does not remove Jacob Zuma from power in the ANC. They don't kick him out. They don't suspend his membership. He's still a member of the ANC, even though he's just been disgraced. Right? They've just voted to remove him as president. They've just pushed him out of presidency. And he's no longer the president of the ANC now. But he sticks around. It is only when Jacob Zuma realizes that he can gain a lot more power and influence and money forming his own political party that he leaves the ANC and forms Mkhonto weSizwe. Right? He leaves. The ANC doesn't kick him out. Julius Malema. Julius Malema, a year earlier, says that he will die for Zuma and for the ANC. Zuma betrays him, and what does Julius do? He leaves and starts his own party, stealing about 10% of the ANC's overall election results, right, or voters. Thabo Mbeki gets disgraced by the ANC. He's voted out of power, removed from office, and yet Thabo Mbeki remains a member of the ANC to this day. To this day, Thabo Mbeki defends the ANC. No matter what, the ANC must always be defended. You see, the radicals don't care about the ANC. They care about themselves. They care about making money, becoming rich. They want communism because communism gives them the power to do as they will. So that part they do want because they want the power to do as they will. They don't care about the ANC. Cyril Ramaphosa, Thabo Mbeki, Nelson Mandela, Fikile Mbalula, Gwede Mantashe, these guys care about the ANC. The ANC is the most important thing, not the country, not the country's existence. This is why the ANC, for years, knowing that Jacob Zuma was destroying the ANC and the country, they never voted against him because voting against him would have hurt the ANC more. So they would have gladly watched South Africa burn to preserve the ANC because their argument is so long as the ANC stands, there is always the revolution. The revolution dies when the ANC dies. That's the constitutionalists. They do what is good for the revolution, what is good for the ANC. Now, with Phala Phala happening, and this really is, I saw someone yesterday say that this is President Cyril Ramaphosa's Nkandla moment. And to some extent, they're not wrong. This is Ramaphosa's Nkandla moment. Because what happened to Cyril Ramaphosa on Friday, he went from being the favorite president of South Africa to a man that most South Africans no longer trust. But it's not just that, right? Yes, the Friday thing mattered, but I'll quickly show you guys what's really happening to Cyril Ramaphosa. This. When the ANC votes Cyril Ramaphosa into power in 2018, the ANC needs someone that can bring South Africa to the promised land. And in order to understand the promised land, you have to understand what the ANC views as the promised land. The promised land is looting and stealing and economic growth in equal parts. So, in other words, grow the economy of South Africa, but don't stop the gravy train. Because remember, we're the chiefs. We can't be poor. We're the chiefs. The chiefs must eat. But it needs to be in balance. Their argument is that Jacob Zuma cared so much about the chiefs eating that he forgot the economy of South Africa. Now, also super important to understand here, the ANC doesn't want too much economic growth. And again, you have to understand the history of communism in order to understand this. You see, too much economic growth isn't good for communism. The communists actually thought this. Karl Marx himself wrote that as capitalism continues, the workers of the world will rise up and they will overthrow the capitalists because they will realize how unfair the system is. Instead, the opposite happened. As capitalism increased throughout Germany, the workers no longer wanted communism. They no longer wanted socialism. Why? Because as capitalism increased, the workers were starting to make more money. And now that the workers were making more money, the workers no longer wanted to give that away. Right? The workers were now dreaming of also owning their own factories. They were now dreaming of owning their own homes. The last thing they wanted to do now was suddenly give it all away to the state. So for the ANC, and I won't say what that magical number is, but for the ANC, there is a magical number of economic growth. It's enough that the people of South Africa are content, but not so much that the people of South Africa outgrow the need for communism. And Cyril Ramaphosa was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be the guy to rebalance it. Cyril Ramaphosa loves to speak about how there's reform happening in South Africa, right? And they're reforming this country. Name one big shot in the ANC that has been prosecuted for the Zondo Commission, the Matlanga Commission, or the Ad Hoc Committee. Name one higher up at the ANC that's been prosecuted for this. I guarantee you can't. They didn't go after the big guys. They're not going after the big guys. Because the big guys are the chiefs. They're allowed to eat. This is more an exercise in reminders. What Cyril Ramaphosa and the ANC is doing is they're reminding the chiefs, eat, but don't eat too much. The issue, of course, and this is what the ANC can't understand, is that the pie is no longer large enough to actually feed the chiefs. It was, in 1994, the pie was large enough. People were making money and people were able to pay their taxes. Now, in 2026, that pie has diminished. So yesterday, we got these results, and I actually shared these results with you from Statistics SA. Unemployment is up by 1.8%. Unemployment is up by 1.8%, but it's actually far worse than that. Because that's just the official unemployment rate of South Africa. That's the official people that don't want to work. And it's at 33%, I think. But official only includes those people that are actively seeking jobs. It doesn't include those who don't care. And as Stats SA themselves showed, 80% of the unemployed people in South Africa are what they call disgruntled workers or demotivated workers. Sorry, not disgruntled, demotivated. What does that mean? It's people who no longer look for jobs. They've given up. There's no jobs, so there's no point in looking. So the actual unemployment rate of South Africa is far, far, far higher than what we even know. Right? The expanded one is about 43.7%, as they say here. But what we found out about the GNU is that in the first quarter of this year, we lost 300,000 jobs in the economy. I want that to sink in, guys, because this is, I believe, at least from what I could find, the first time that South Africa did not create a single job in a quarter. We've always had terrible job growth in this country. That's always been the fact, right? We were usually per quarter, we would create maybe 20 to 30,000 jobs a quarter, if we're lucky, right? But we never lost jobs per quarter. There'd always be sectors that actually grew, and therefore more people would ultimately be employed. Not enough, but at least, there would be people employed. This is the first quarter that I could find, and I could be wrong, but it is the first quarter that I could find where we lost 300,000 jobs. It's 345,000 actually. Why is that significant? Well, it's significant because if the trend continues, South Africa could lose in 2026 over 1 million jobs. To put this into perspective for all of you, South Africa adds 600,000 new workers to the economy every single year. We just lost the equivalent of half of those jobs. It's not that we're just creating half of those jobs. It means that if nothing else changes, let's say for the next 3 quarters, we lose no jobs in the economy, but we also don't create any jobs in the economy, and everything remains the same. By the end of this year, South Africa will have 900,000 people less working. 900,000 less working as a result of the ANC. So what exactly is this? What does this mean? Well, Cyril Ramaphosa was supposed to be the guy that gets the cadres to eat, but not so much that they destroy economic growth. The problem is that he couldn't do that. And so the GNU rises up. And this is a new hope. Why is this a new hope? Well, I actually think that the GNU, I think the ANC looked at the GNU as a gift. Why a gift? Well, for that, I'll share something else with you guys quickly. Um, Cyril Ramaphosa writes the following. This is yesterday. Just over a month ago, we held the 6th South African Investment Conference, where we secured a record 54 billion US dollars or 890 billion rand in pledges. These are pledges, by the way. They've not yet been invested. They might never be invested, but these are people who pledged, right? We'll get into it. This has encouraged us to set a new investment goal of 3 trillion rand or 180 billion over the next 5 years. Now, if you think about this, he's not imagining a world where over the next 5 years, people will want to invest that amount every single year. He's not imagining a world where over the next 5 years, people will want to invest even more. He's imagining a world where over the next 5 years, he would be able to convince or beg his way to at least 2 more of those opportunities. That's now Cyril Ramaphosa himself. So the world is no longer investing, but that was the point of the GNU. That was the hope of the GNU. With the GNU coming to power, the world would finally go, oh, new government, let's go. We can invest in this country because the DA is in charge now, right? The DA is part of the government. We can finally invest. Instead, that did not translate. That did not happen. So where is the ANC? What is this NEC meeting actually about for the ANC? And now we get to the meat and potatoes of our conversation. So let's just go to where the NEC is meeting today. Here we go. The NEC met yesterday, and now they're talking to the caucus to explain to them what the NEC decided in yesterday's meeting. Where are we now? The constitutionalists, Fikile Mbalula, Ramaphosa, these guys, they can't afford to have Ramaphosa step down. They can't afford it. If Ramaphosa steps down, Paul Mashatile takes over. And that would be the end. They know it. They know that Paul Mashatile has no interest in a slow, steady rise to communism. They know that Paul Mashatile will take over and he will radically transform this economy. Why? Because Paul Mashatile has already said he'll bring back the EFF and he'll bring back MK. He will involve them in the GNU. Paul Mashatile was one of the people who opposed the government of national unity. For the ANC, the fact that the GNU isn't delivering is a massive issue. Because the GNU was supposed to be the moment where they convinced the radicals this is the answer. We should just do this, and then it'll all be better. But now Paul Mashatile is gaining traction. And we know this because Gweri Mantashe almost admitted it in so many words yesterday, where he said Ramaphosa wanted to resign. After Pala after the constitutional thing, Ramaphosa was willing to resign. So that makes it 3 times now that we know for a fact Ramaphosa wanted to resign. The first time Ramaphosa said he'll resign was after Pala. right? When the news first broke, he was willing to step down. The second time was after the GNU. After the GNU formation and after the bad election results, Ramaphosa wanted to resign. And now again with Pala Pala. Ramaphosa doesn't want to be there anymore. Ramaphosa doesn't want to be there anymore because I think Ramaphosa understands if this thing continues the way that it is, his head is going to be on the chopping block. He's going to lose a lot as a result of this. Because I don't think over the last 32 years, Ramaphosa's hands were squeaky clean. I think Ramaphosa has a lot of pokes and a lot of fires, and none of them is actually legal. And so Ramaphosa just desperately wants to get out, and he wants the limelight, the spotlight sort of off of him. You actually see this article. This was a really interesting article. The Common Sense has put out 2 articles now on Cyril Ramaphosa. In the one, they actually make the claim that Cyril Ramaphosa's undoing will be the fact that he's refused to go after Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma. Because Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma will be the thing that pulls him down. They will be the thing that undoes him. But the ANC is going to do it for them long before that even happens. Because right now, the play for the ANC is simple. We need to buy time. We need to buy time because we need to figure out a way how to get anyone other than Paul Mashatile into the leadership of the ANC. Because if Paul Mashatile gets leader, done. Game over. Thanks for playing. Paul Mashatile will destroy the ANC. He'll get rich in the process, but he will destroy the ANC. He doesn't care. So what do we do now? And for the ANC, this represents one of the biggest catastrophes in their history. I know a lot of people might look at this and go, well, the ANC has faced odds like this before. Things have been bad for the ANC before. Look at Jacob Zuma. They survived all of this. And I even know that a lot of people will say, well, you've been saying the ANC is done for almost 2 decades now, right? Since Jacob Zuma, people started talking about the downfall of the ANC. You can track the panic of the ANC in the way they plan. So ordinarily, communists like to plan long term. That's why in every communist government, you have these 5-year plans and 10-year plans and 15-year plans and 30-year plans and whatnot. The ANC in 1997 releases a document, the NDR, the National Democratic Revolution. That document is for the next 30 years almost. A lot of the things in that document should happen by 2030. The ANC no longer plans for 5 years or 10 years. They don't have time for that. The ANC right now is planning for the next election because that's the only thing they still have control over. They can't think about what are we going to do in 5 years' time because it no longer matters. You look at, I'll quickly show you guys this. Just go down the list of the promises that this president continues to make, right? FYI, this is a story that just broke for those of you that didn't see it. Limpopo beneficiaries, these were black people who were given farms and then given cows to start their farming career. Yeah, it ends up they just ate the cows and now they have no more cows left. Stories like this is a relatively big problem. Right here you have the president of South Africa talking about infrastructure development and how they're going to be the next great frontier of investment as South Africa works to modernize ports, rail, energy, and digital systems to unlock growth and create jobs. These are the things that South Africans are tired of. These endless promises that never actually do anything. Nothing ever actually comes of these endless promises. And so the ANC fully understands their promises no longer matter, right? It no longer matters whether or not they promise the people the moon, the sun, and the stars because they can't deliver on those promises. So now we see the more radicalized version of the ANC. They need to buy votes. One way or another, they need to get just a little bit more votes. NHI is a response to the problem of the ANC. And this is why I warned you guys in my video on Monday Be ready. NHI is not just a pipe dream. It's no longer just a political slogan or a voting slogan. The ANC fully understands that their people are sick and tired. So instead, they are going to take the lowest hanging fruit possible. The ANC will ram through the NHI and they will ram through expropriation without compensation because it ensures the next election. And the work from now until December next year, when the ANC has their next meeting, their next conference to choose the next leader of the ANC, they're going to work extra hard to try and get Patrice Motsepe as the front runner. There's going to be a lot of deals that's going to be made to try and get Patrice Motsepe. Why? What is it that the ANC thinks Patrice Motsepe would do for them? Now I know if you listen to Rob Hersoff and you listen to a number of other commentators in South Africa, they'll tell you that Patrice Motsepe is a great guy. And Patrice Motsepe is going to be a great president of South Africa. Frans Cronje said this not too long ago. Rob Hersoff has said this. There's a number of political analysts who actually think that Patrice Motsepe would be a great guy because Patrice Motsepe is going to bring back investment. Patrice Motsepe is going to put business first because he's a businessman. My question to that is, in what way is Patrice Motsepe different to Ramaphosa? Name the business that Patrice Motsepe built from scratch. Patrice Motsepe made his money through BEE. Same as Ramaphosa. Rainbow Minerals wasn't built by Patrice. It was part of Anglo that was then given away thanks to BEE, and he became the beneficiary of it. See, entrepreneurship isn't just about owning something. An entrepreneur is someone who builds something. It's someone who understands the hardship of building something. It's not someone who just happens to walk into millions upon millions, billions upon billions of dollars. That's not entrepreneurship. That's not someone that understands business. That's someone that's lucky and happens to make an incredible amount of money. Doesn't mean he understands where that money is supposed to come from. Patrice Motsepe is going to be as bad, if not worse, than Cyril Ramaphosa. Because Patrice Motsepe will be brought in to usher in this era of cadres eat and the economy grows. But it has to happen simultaneously. It cannot be that all the cadres must stop eating. Because how can you be the chief if you're poor? The cadres must be allowed to eat. And then Patrice could figure out how to get the economy to grow, but the cadres must eat. NHI is a response to simply get them over the line. Expropriation without compensation is a response to get them over the line. The name changes. The Graaf Reinet name change. All of these are responses to get them over the line. They just need people to hold on one more election. And then once that election is done, they'll think about the next election. What more can we give you that you continue to support us? That is a party on the verge of a death spiral. Why? Because the ANC's methodology is the reason for their failure. Because the ANC believes that the state must hold all power. Because the ANC believes that the cadres must eat, the economy will continue to struggle and die. So how do you allow the cadres to eat, bring the communist government, but also allow for some economic growth when these things are antithetical to one another. And that's really where the ANC has no other options. They're going to push Patrice Motsepe. They're going to hold on with Cyril Ramaphosa for as long as possible. But Cyril Ramaphosa is now the face. You will see in the next few months, Cyril Ramaphosa will just sort of become almost an outlier. Sort of very similar to what happened to Thabo Mbeki towards the end, right? If you guys remember, cast your minds back to, and I know it's very long ago at this point, but if you remember Thabo Mbeki towards the end, the ANC were sort of doing a lot of things without Thabo Mbeki. There were already, Jacob Zuma was already sort of thrust into the spotlight. He was already the big guy. Mbeki was, you already knew that Mbeki is no longer really the leader of the ANC, right? Because that's how it is. Mbeki had lost the trust of the party. And at that point, the radical economic transformationalists were far more powerful. And so they wanted Zuma because they were done with this constitutional nonsense. Zuma, of course, did enough damage that the constitutional nonsense had to make a return. But now the RET guys have one more. They have one more, or one last hurrah that they desperately want to get over the finish line. This could go a lot of different ways, I think. Nicholas, that's literally the point, right? They started sending him off to basically go do stuff like this, go beg people for money, go travel, do whatever. Just you're not needed here. You're not necessary. Go do something else. That's what I mean with Thabo Mbeki was sort of pushed to the sidelines almost. You could see it leading up to it. Ultimately, I think the things that I think the things that's most scary about it is it's in these moments where the ANC oftentimes become the worst of the worst. It's in these moments where factions within the ANC start to fight for power that you start to see massive amounts of corruption, where they really start to steal. As all of these guys start to realize that the party might almost be over for their side, now they really start to get stuck in. And it's remarkable how hard the president is trying to work. I just want to show you guys this, and this isn't even anything to do with the topic for today. I need to show you guys this because it is absolutely phenomenal. Just read these words for a second. The ANC notes with serious concern the latest quarterly labor force survey released by Statistics South Africa, which shows the expanded unemployment rate rising to 43.7%, with 301, it's actually 345,000 jobs, more South Africans unemployed in the first quarter of 2026. Quickly, guys, quickly think about the phrasing here. The ANC notes with serious concern. What the hell are you talking about? But note that this is part of the game. The same way the ANC distanced themselves from Jacob Zuma, the ANC is distancing themselves from all of these failures. Because whose failure is this? The ANC is in government. The ANC controls all the levers of economic power in this country. How could you, the party in charge of this, note with serious concern anything? This is your job. You did this. And yet the ANC acts as if they had nothing to do with this. This wasn't the thing. Just the first of many such examples that's going to start coming through. Like, trust me on this. It's going to happen more and more. they're going to throw the GNU and Cyril Ramaphosa under the bus as fast and as often as they can to ultimately create this idea that, this is Cyril's failure. We, the ANC, will fix Cyril's failures. And it's going to happen the same way that it happened with Jacob Zuma. The state capture stuff with Jacob Zuma and the ANC sort of talking about state capture as if that just never had anything to do with them. The same thing is going to happen to Ramaphosa. The exact same thing. That's what Ramaphosa and the constitutionalists are trying to avoid. They are desperately trying to avoid that reality. And that's why they're going to try and put people like Patrice Motsepe into the limelight. That's why they're going to. I imagine he's going to announce he's going to run in the next few months. We're going to see Patrice actually admit, yes, we'll be running. All right, let's quickly see. What do you guys have to say? I needed to make this video because I've been thinking about this particular topic for weeks now. As we've seen this whole thing play out, I've been thinking about the ANC and their position, and I needed to get this topic out so that you guys understand how I think about it, so that it makes a bit more sense. And Nicholas, thank you so much for the 35 Rand. I truly appreciate the donation, sir. Thank you for your efforts, mate. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you guys and to give you a bit of an insight. I think that's what my live streams are. A lot of the time I treat the live streams as sort of like a live. I'm running through the theories in my own head and sort of presenting them to you, because almost every single time after a live stream, what ends up happening is I'll walk away from the stream, and I usually take like an hour after a live stream to think about the topic, and then new things pop up. Sometimes I actually think of things and I go, oh, I was wrong about that thing. It's now I think it actually works this way. So it helps me to sort of think about different things, but while thinking out loud. My worry is when they lash out as a collective, the ANC, people will follow suit. So the thing that we have to be worried about in terms of violence and revolutions is actually food pricing. That's the most scary thing in this entire country, is food pricing. And the reason that's so incredibly scary is it's a reality now. It's no longer just theoretical. It's most likely coming, and it's going to be here sooner than people actually think. Way sooner than people actually think. The decisions that has been made by the ANC over the course of the last, let's say, 2 years, not even the last 32 years, let's say the last 2 years, the ANC could have been in a position now where we could have been very good friends with the United States. In which case, all of the refined petroleum products that we could possibly need, we could just get from the United States. And we could literally just go to the United States and ask them for it. Because the United States are producing more oil now than ever before. And they're ramping up even more. The Americans have oil and petroleum products for us. But instead, we have continued to alienate the Americans. We've continued to tell the Americans they can go, kick rocks. We'll do our own thing. We want to do our own thing. We're running out of fertilizer. And the way the farming community of South Africa currently is, I was speaking to a family member of mine who farms, who told me that a lot of farmers in their area, this was after yesterday's video, a lot of the farmers in their area are actually starting to pack it in. Actually, this wasn't even last. This was like a few weeks ago. I was speaking to I was speaking to the family member on the phone, and they told me a lot of the farmers in the region are packing it in because it's cheaper for them to just not plant anything. That's cheaper. Why? Well, because if you're a farmer and you're looking at diesel prices and you're not sure where that diesel price actually ends, how can you plant? Right? Because you could very easily get to a place where you spend more money planting than what you'll ever be paid for. Because now remember, when it comes to farming, everything is uncertain. If you're a small farmer, and I've explained this yesterday, most farming is contractual. Most farmers don't just plant in the hope that they can sell to someone. Most farmers plant already with a contract. So I will sell this many tons to you at this price. Now, even if you were to take the farmers who maybe don't sell at a contract, because there's never enough contracts for everyone. Right? And so there are farmers who just need to take a chance, plant and sell at the time. But now imagine for a second you're a farmer, you start planting right now. In a month or two from now, diesel prices spike up, like absolutely explode upwards. Now, obviously, this is costing you a lot more to plant. And then imagine a month before harvest, diesel prices plummet. What does that do to the price that the wholesale guys are willing to pay you? It plummets as well, right? It plummets as well. So these guys are now willing to offer you a lot more because the price of diesel has completely plummeted. But you paid a lot more to actually plant. So now either you sell this at a loss and hopefully make some of your money back, right? You're going to lose money, but maybe not as much money. Or you try and sit on it. But if you're a small farmer, most of them don't have the grain capacity or the silo capacity to store all of their produce. And so, and some of the things are very, very expensive to store. So you're, as a farmer, just in a position where the uncertainty alone kills you. And so it's easier to just go, I'm not going to plant anything. What does that do in a year from now when we finally need to start consuming this food? Well, there's less supply. What's the golden rule of markets? If supply is less than demand, price goes up. And this is the death spiral. Because as prices rise, fewer and fewer people can actually afford the price. So suddenly demand starts to drop. But supply is already restricted. And that will continue to rise until it reaches equilibrium. Until those who can pay and that which is supplied is in balance. That's how the market works. That is it has to lead to parity. What happens to the people who can't afford it? They either starve or they start a revolution. Because we're talking food here. This isn't the same as saying, well, you can't afford an iPhone. I can't afford an iPhone. It's too expensive. I'm not going to start a revolution over not buying an iPhone. Right? I don't have an iPhone. Kind of sucks. I don't want an iPhone. I would rather have a Samsung Galaxy. But the point is, no one's going to start a revolution over an iPad. But food? When you're hungry, but your money can't afford to buy the food because there's just not enough food, people will start revolutions over that. So that's the fear I have, is that in a year from now, food prices will get absolutely insane. And it won't be the farmers that's just greedy and just want money. The farmers have to do this because we have a government that has created the most uncertain business environment in the history period of the world period ever period. What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Striking similarity to the trends of the original Bolshevik Revolution? Oh yeah, it's pretty much always the same. Farmers cannot do a costing exercise to plant a crop or produce milk. How can one stay in business then? Well, Robert, that's exactly the point, right? If if the price is so volatile, it's almost impossible, not just for farmers, it's almost impossible for anyone to do a costing exercise, right? To do a cost benefit analysis, to do an actual cost framework and say, right, we're going to produce this many things, it's going to cost us this much per thing. Because you literally don't know what's going to happen to the diesel or the fuel price in a month from now. I was speaking to here where I live. There's a biltong place that I go to. I like to support the guy because it's this old woman and his wife, wonderful people, right? And if you're in my area, if you're in the Helderberg area, go look for a place called the Biltong Spains. It's in Strand. It's in the main road of Strand. The Biltong Spains, best biltong you'll ever buy, right? In the Helderberg area, best biltong you'll ever buy. But I was there yesterday, and I was talking to the and I just asked him about the meat, and he said it's insane. The price of meat to just transport that meat, it's too expensive. Right? So you now have butcheries that can no longer really afford to even buy the meat because it's too expensive. They know no one is actually going to buy this from them, not if you include all of the cost to it. So we're heading for a bad time here, boys. We're heading for a really bad time here. But of course, you guys don't have to worry about that too much because Peter Kriliki, he's got the answers. Ladies and gentlemen, he's got the answers. This is not even a story that I planned for today, but I have a video about this tonight. Literally after the stream, I'm quickly going to make this video. That's why I have all of this information. But I just wanted to share this with you guys. The Starlink situation for me has truly gotten out of control. Can I quickly ask in chat, how many of you are open to Starlink and how many of you are maybe a little bit, I wouldn't say against it, but say you're not entirely convinced that we need Starlink? Write 1 for you want Starlink and 2 for I'm apprehensive to the idea of Starlink. 1 for open, 2 for apprehensive. Bring it in. Right, so most of you are a 1. I like this. I like this. I'm glad to have quite a few based viewers. I really enjoy that. So 1-1. Here's what bothers me, and I'll just read. Peter Kriel says the following: beware of new US infrastructure. Hey, Nicholas, thank you very much for the 35 round, man. Really appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 80 grams of biltong. Hey, I appreciate that, sir. Late to the convo, cost and stability. Jan, how you doing, sir? The quality of our international internet access. Hey, Wesley, thanks for the 14 rand, dude. Really appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Starlink is a must. Wesley, so I actually agree with you, and in my video I'll go into a lot more information. But let me quickly read this for you guys. Beware of new US infrastructure and technology in South Africa. This includes Starlink and AI companies. Not only do they want to use our people as data ore, but this infrastructure can also be used to spy on both our critical resources and sensitive government information. Now, the reason this annoys me to no end, and the reason this is genuinely, I would love to know who actually funds Peter Kriel. Because he is not where he is right now because of intelligence. It is not his intellectual acuity. It is not his academic prestige. Peter Kriel is a moron. And I don't mean to be, I don't even mean to be insulting to him. Pet- I have never heard an original thing from Peter Kriel. Like, not an original thought of a day old in this guy's head. But what I have yet to actually see from him is anything that matches the level of stupidity in this post. So let me just lay this out for you guys that might not necessarily know, because I'm sure a lot of people aren't necessarily. Peter Kriel wrote this message on X. X belongs to Elon Musk, who owns Starlink. Peter Kriel has a YouTube channel. In order to have a YouTube channel, one must have a Google account. Google owns YouTube, and YouTube and Google is owned by Alphabet. This is an American company. Okay. Peter Kriel, everything he does, when he Googles something to write stupid little messages, that's an American company gaining all of his data. Like, that's an American company gathering all of that data that he's Googling now. But here's the real kicker. Like, here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't even realize. How many of you have ever heard of DARPA? Do you guys know what DARPA is? Or DARPA? In English, DARPA, Afrikaans, DARPA. Do you guys know who that is? Yep, Defense Industry. Yeah. Okay, so DARPA is a tiny little department of the United States military. Tiny department. They're sort of attached to the United States military, but also sort of not. It's about 250 people that work for DARPA. Most of their names are unknown. And DARPA has effectively an unlimited budget. It's not officially unlimited. Officially, it's about 3.4 billion US dollars, but it's effectively unlimited. So DARPA invented the internet. Like, most people don't even know that the internet is an American military invention. Now, of course, the actual origins of the internet is oftentimes a little bit more obscured, because DARPA doesn't just necessarily come out and admit, oh, look. But there's reports that DARPA had AI in the 80s already. In fact, a lot of the reports we now have suggest that OpenAI didn't invent AI. They didn't write the first code for AI. Once DARPA had already moved on to the next frontier, they then give the information and technology to private companies to make their money back. So the stuff that you and I are using today, DARPA is already 10, 20 years ahead of us, inventing new things and working on new things that they're using. And then whatever they are done with, so when that's old news, they sort of hand down to everyone else, right? Because these companies actually buy it and then share the money with DARPA, so DARPA actually makes all of their money back that they were spending researching all of this technology. But the internet, we know for a fact, came from DARPA. It was their invention. That means that, just for those of you who might really not know, when you connect to the internet here in South Africa, and you say, watch a YouTube video from an American, right? So you open up your favorite American YouTuber and you watch his YouTube video. You're connecting here in South Africa. From here, your cable runs to CCOM, or maybe the Google cable, whichever one is available at the time for protocol, and that then runs all the way up Africa into Europe. Once it gets to Europe, It will connect to the Google cables all over Europe, and it will go to America or to Europe, dependent on the data center where this video was collected from. Every single time that you connect to the internet, you're connecting to American infrastructure, American protocols, and you're most likely using technology that was invented and created by the Americans. You don't need Starlink in South Africa in order to spy on South Africans. Because every single thing that South Africans do on the internet is from America. I don't know if you guys, like, do you know of a South African internet service provider that has their own email and their own video service, and their networks does not connect to any world networks or international networks? If you know any of those people, I would love to meet them. But South Africans already use everything that America offers. So what exactly is Pieter Kriel up to? Why is he warning uneducated people about something that is just absolutely untrue? This is why I said I want to know who pays him. I am willing to bet good money that Pieter Kriel is an agent of China. I'm willing to bet really good money that Pieter Kriel is a Chinese agent. His role here in South Africa is the communist takeover of South Africa, but also the rejection of westernization in South Africa. I'll have a video going into more detail because there's some news about BE, about Starlink and BE. He was there last year as a black representative. Yeah, I could never understand why would anyone ask Pieter Kriel to go to China for a business thing. Like, that never made sense to me. Like, what the hell are we talking about here? What business has this kid ever started in his entire life? Absolute insanity. But the cadres told them Elon wants their data. Yeah, but that's my question. Why? Like, I get he doesn't like Elon Musk, right? That's fine. He doesn't like Elon Musk. But why the lies? What is it about Starlink that they hate so much? I'll tell you what it is. China has a competitor to Starlink. So the Chinese agents have to do everything in their power to ensure that Starlink does not open in South Africa, so that the Chinese competitor can open up here. And if you worry about people using you as data ore and people stealing your data, the Chinese are far worse than the Americans. Like, far worse than the Americans. They have too much to hide. Timu, Jason Bourne. Yeah, I feel like that would be an insult to Timu. You know, like, they're not nearly smart enough to have an original thought. No, I agree with you there. Pieter Kriel feels like someone who he repeats talking points. Work suits the vibe. The British, how you doing, sir? I love this. I love 1984. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I absolutely love this book, and I would absolutely say you have to read it. Biltong, Spain's on my way there now. Luckily, I stay in Strand, and I love my biltong like any South African. Fafa, you're gonna love it. It is my favorite place. So I moved from the north, Pretoria, Polokwane. I moved from there to Cape Town, and one of the things I hated about Cape Town is the biltong. The biltong in Cape Town isn't good. Nothing compared to the north. Like, if you're used to biltong and droewors from the north, Cape Town's biltong and droewors tastes like ass. It's just not nice. And then I discovered this biltong Spence, and I was like, "Whoa, this tastes like the biltong in the north." Uh, and the lady and the guy that runs the store are absolutely fantastic. They're just incredible people. So yeah, absolutely. If you live in Strand or Gordons Bay or Somerset West, and you're ever looking for good biltong, go main road. Right, you'll see if you're driving on the main road of Strand. I think it's called main road. You'll see that there's this fuel station. It's like a petrol station that's closed down, like it's completely fenced around, and the pumps are sort of removed. It's completely closed, but right opposite that, you'll see a yellow sign that says Biltong Spains. Just drive in there, go get yourself some good biltong. Tell them Stefan sent you. They'll know exactly. Because the guy watches my videos, actually. I found out last Friday when my brother went there to go buy biltong, and the woman was like, "Wait, your brother does YouTube videos?" And I was like, "Yes." So yeah, they'll know. Chaps and ladies, I got a doc appointment at 2. Thank you so much for the stream. Nicholas, thank you so much for the donations and for the support. Truly appreciate you. Good luck with your meeting, sir. The other really good biltong shop is on the N7 at the Traval truck stop, Puma Garage, before Vredenal. I don't know any of those words. Paul, I don't know any of those words. The Traval truck stop, Puma Garage, before Vredendal. I don't think I've been to Vredendal yet. Great biltong place in Hermanus as well. There's a great ice cream place in Hermanus, though. Like a really good ice cream place. It's not the best ice cream place I've been to. If you want the best ice cream ever, you have to go to Lawrenceford, the Lawrenceford Market. Have you guys ever been there? They have Wedgwood ice cream there, like absolutely insane. But there's a place in Hermanus. It's gelato something. They sell gelato ice cream, super good ice cream. Definitely worth a go. If you're ever in the Hermanus area, although I must say Hermanus is a bit of a yuppie place. Now they can sponsor the channel. No, I don't think any business in South Africa would want to sponsor this channel. And the reason for it is most businesses in South Africa don't. Oh, I would go so far as to say it might be Moro Gelato, Dylan. There are very few true conservatives in South Africa. And it's one of the things that I try to do in my live streams, but also in my videos, is to show you the world and the solutions from the perspective of a Christian conservative, right? Because there's so few open Christian conservative content creators. Like, even just listening to some creators that will say they're conservative or that they're Christian conservative, when I listen to how they speak about certain things, I'm not saying all, there are actually quite a few that's also really cool, but when I listen to the way they speak and the way the things that they say, it becomes clear to me that they're not conservative insofar as actual conservatism. It's more that they're right from the far left. Right, so they're on the right side of the far left, and so they believe themselves to be conservative. Because obviously, if you're to the right of the left, you must be a conservative. But like an actual conservative, I listened to someone. I won't say who it is, but I listened to someone the other day that was talking about that was talking about being a conservative, and then sort of made arguments for abortion and made arguments for gay marriage, and that sort of immediately, like, wait, that's not a conservative position. That's a left wing position. I get you're not a super left wing nutcase, but if you're making arguments for abortion, if you're making arguments for gay marriage, you're not a conservative. I'm sorry, you are just not. You're a liberal. You're a lefty. You might not be far left, but you're not conservative. Um, the problem is, of course, in South Africa, there's a lot of people, especially in the business world, that they would never sponsor a channel like mine because they might be fine with a lot of things I have to say. But most businesses in South Africa do not, they would not touch someone that is anti gay marriage. They would not touch someone that is anti abortion because apparently these things matter, right? Apparently these things are important. Wesley, thank you so much for the 35 Rand, dude. Really appreciate you, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Love your channel, sir. Do you see any hope for our future in South Africa? Hope you know how far you are how you are creating hope for our fellow South Africans. Wesley, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I see hope, of course. But it depends on what we view as hope. There's an interesting story that I was literally reading today. Let me see if I can really find it for you. During my Bible study, I happened upon this story, and it was really good. And just sort of, it shows you how humans think about the world around them, and how we all think about it, and how we ought to think about things. Let me quickly find this for you. So it's Jesus and the woman from Samaria, right? And I'll quickly read this for you. It's from John 4, from verse 1. Now, when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples, he left Judea and departed again for Galilee, and he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. Verse 7. A woman from Samaria came to draw water. And Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God, and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and his livestock." And Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I will give him will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." Now, focus on this. Jesus just said a number of really interesting things to this woman. First, he's not going to give her water, he's going to give her living water. That would be a question. If I was sitting there and Jesus was saying that to me, I would say, "Jesus, what do you mean living water? What's the difference between living water and water? What's going on here?" Then Jesus says to her, "You'll never be thirsty again because the water I'm giving you will lead to eternal life." That's a big deal. You're going to give me something to drink and I'm going to get eternal life? Now listen to how the woman responds. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty and have to come here to draw water." What did she hear? "Oh, you mean to tell me I would never again have to walk down to the well to get water? Okay, give me some of that water. Let me drink it." She cared nothing for the actual gift that Jesus wanted to give her. See, as humans, we focus, and Wesley, I promise I'm still answering your question. As humans, we oftentimes focus on personal comfort, right? So when we think of God's plan, or when we think about life, we think about our personal comfort. Like, when is things going to be good for us? Not necessarily realizing that our personal comforts and our eternal life are not always intertwined. It is true that a lot of Christians have perfectly great lives, right? And they make money and they're rich and they're happy and, they never face any problems. But it's also true that a lot of Christians don't have that, right? For a lot of Christians, life is really, really bad. but they find joy in their persecution and suffering because they are working for the kingdom of God. So when you ask me, do I have hope for the future? I say I do, because in my view, God is in charge, and I don't have to worry about what the future is because I know that His sovereign will is in play, and I know that nothing I or anyone else does can change His will. It is His will. He is God after all. He decides the future of mankind. What I also know is that that future might not look the way that I think it might look or should look. I mean, if you ask me, Stefan, if you were God, what would you think you deserve? I might tell you, oh, I should live in a 4-bedroom house in Somerset West, and I should drive a nice car, maybe two. I should have a big screen TV. I should be rich. I should have enough money in the bank that I can live comfortably. Maybe make like 150,000 rand a month, so I can almost be like rich and stuff. I think that's good. I think God should give that to me. Instead, God decided not to give that to me. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, not even a 1-bedroom apartment. Um, I don't have a car, mainly because I can't really afford a car, but also because I don't really drive that much. So it's not really the end of the world for me. Um, I don't make anywhere near that, right? In fact, last year, there were times where I was making less than 10,000 rand a month when I just switched from gaming to politics because I took a massive financial hit switching from gaming to politics. And yet, and here's the interesting thing, I really did. And I'm not saying this to sort of get anyone to donate money. Please don't think about that. This is genuinely just to answer Wesley's point. I lost. I lost about 7 times the amount of money going from games to politics. Gaming paid well, like seriously well. Even just videos that would make 5,000 views would make about the same as my videos getting 50,000 views on politics. So politics really doesn't pay well. Politics in America would pay better, but politics in South Africa really doesn't pay well. And yet, I make less money now than what I made when I was doing gaming, but I'm happier. Okay, I'm not quite being honest. I am now making more money than what I made while doing gaming for the most part. Although with gaming, it would be very up and down. Some months I could make $7,000 in a month. Other months I might make one and a half, $2,000. Right, so it was up and down. I'm now making sort of more. Right, I'm making just over $1,000 a month. I'm pretty well taken care of. I can survive. But I'm happier now than what I've ever been doing games ever in my entire life, even before I was a Christian, because every once in a while someone comments on a video and says thank you for what you do. Every once in a while, today I was walking in Food Lovers Market, um, and as I'm entering the pay aisle, there's a guy there called Price, one of my viewers. But as I walk in, I can see him looking at me, and he sort of recognizes me, and he goes, "Wait, aren't you the guy on YouTube?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he says, "Thank you so much for the things that you do." And I'm like, "Oh, that makes it worth it for me." Right? Knowing that my content means something to other people. Am I rich? No, right? But in my mind, that's what would be good. Right? It would be good if God made me rich and gave me all of these riches. But that's not his plan. That's not what he wants for me. Instead, he gives me something else. And if I'm focused on him, I can see how that thing is good. Now, in the same way, Wesley, to answer your question, the future that South Africa has to go through might not immediately look good to us. Right? It might not immediately look good to us. But if we trust in the Lord, if we trust in his will, it is the only future we should want. Because God says that he makes all things work out for good for those who believe in him, to those who are called according to his purpose. And we can trust that part. We can know that that's true. So, yeah, I have tremendous hope for this country. It's why I'm not leaving the country. It's why I'm not going anywhere. I'm happy where I am. Is life hard here? Sure. Is it going to get even harder? Most likely. But I'm happy to be here because this is my country. You guys are my people. And to me, that is all that matters. Everything else we'll deal with. Sure, the ANC is probably going to steal more. They're going to destroy the country a little more. Life's going to get a little worse. Of course, that's fine. But we've survived this long. I know we'll survive longer. I know. I'm fine. So yeah, I have hope. Ryan, how you doing, sir? A lot of people can't handle having a lot of money. It changes people. Not everyone is made for that life. Everyone might want it, but it's not always meant to be. Activist, you're not wrong. My pastor 3 Sundays ago, I think, at church, said something that was, because we're currently working through Ecclesiastes at church. My pastor said something. He said, I know more people that has failed the test of wealth than people who have failed the test of poverty. Because as humans, we don't think about good things as a test. Right? We all understand, if you're a Christian, you understand poverty as a test. God is testing you. He's making you stronger. Right? This is a trial that you have to go through. But then wealth, we don't think of as a test, a trial. I mean, this is something good, right? But we don't understand that money can be an extremely bad thing. Because you do get people who, they worship that money. That money becomes a god to them. If you want to know how bad money can affect you, look at Jeffrey Epstein. If you take that same Jeffrey Epstein, you just don't make him rich, he likely never does the things that he does. He likely never does the evil things that he ends up doing. But thanks to the money, he's completely handed over to his own wickedness and evil, and he doesn't know how to stop. All things in this life is a trial in order to prepare us for eternity. Whether it looks good to us or whether it looks bad. And most of you will be able to, if you're married, you'll understand what I'm about to say. Even though I'm not married, it's something that the Lord has shown me, right? Because as someone who isn't married, who would like to be married one day, you oftentimes think, okay, single life is a trial. You know, it's hard to be single. It's hard to yearn for someone and yet not have them. But married people can tell you it's harder to be married. Because yes, the Lord gives you a good thing. He gives you a good wife. But it's a challenge. Right? The married people here will be able to admit that. It's hard. It's not easy. Yeah, she's a blessing. Or the wives will say he's a blessing. But they can also be a pain in the bottom, right? And it can be very sore and very angering and very, heartbreaking. There's all sorts of things that go on there. Because we think about God's plan wrong. Peter Krill, he is obviously sponsored by Cater. Stefan, thank you for your interesting chats. Love watching and listening to you as you're extremely knowledgeable. Sylvia, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And I'm super glad to have all of you here. I'm just a man that has a lot of time and a lot of rabbit holes. That's genuinely my life. It's just time and rabbit holes. Echo, thank you so much for the 700 Rand donation. Dude, that is insane. Thank you so much. You are very, very, very blessed and blessed me with that. I truly appreciate you, sir. I share your vision that hardship is coming to this country. If we are able to collectively overcome this and get rid of the rot, we will see prosperity, the likes this country has not seen before. It will be a first, though. A fight, though. Echo, I 100% agree with you. It's a trial by fire. And the country, this country, oh man, can you imagine a government that sets the people of this country free? Can you imagine businesses that have had to figure out how to survive with a government that tries everything in its power to destroy it? Can you imagine what those same businesses do when there's suddenly a government that goes, run free, little bird? Do what you need to do. Dude, the amount of economic growth in this country is going to be biblical. It's genuinely going to be insanity. It's just so sad that this ANC can't see it. Like, the country could fix itself in 2 decades if you just allowed it to. But it's part of the game, you know? It's part of the game. And as you said, Echo, uh, it's the hardship that we have to go through, right? It's the things that we have to go through now. We have to face this, so we have to walk through it. And it's always fun to remember David's words, King David. He says to God, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You think about it and you think, oh, a rod beats people. A staff guides and protects. Because oftentimes the way the shepherds, they would have these staffs with like these hooks on them. So that if a sheep wander too close to the edge or maybe just fall off the edge and is on a ledge, they would hook the sheep and they would be able to pull the sheep back up. Um, but he says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Even the things that look like punishment is comforting. So, yeah, we hold on to that. We hold on to that. And we know that he's in charge. Echo, again, thank you so much for the 700 Rand donation. It's always insane to me when I see, uh, actually, when I see all of your donations. You know, I'm blown away by 700 Rand donations because it's larger than what I think I deserve. But then every single time someone gives me 35 Rand or 5 Rand, even when I get like a 2 Rand donation, my thinking is just always, well, someone took their own money to give to me, and that's truly appreciated. So I want to thank all of you that support this channel. And then even if you don't have the means to support, and trust me guys, I understand. Right? I understand what it is to only have a set amount of money. You can't spend more. So please never feel like you should, right? Never feel like, oh, I should give him something. Just you watching, just you being here, and yes, if I can plug a little, hitting the like button, that helps more than you will know. More than you will know. Because every single time you watch, you give the algorithm a signal that it should let more people watch. So whatever support you give, just always know that I am humbled and truly grateful for all of you. So thank you so much. With that, I'm going to go eat because I haven't eaten yet and I have Ascension Day service at church tonight. What is this money you speak of? 144. If you don't know what money is, I genuinely can't help you. Like, if that is how bad things are for you, you are on a whole new level of trial, my good sir. Hey, that is a trial that I hope that you're strong enough for it. I don't know what to say to you. That's bigger than me. But no, yes, I'm gonna go make some food quickly so that I can eat, so that I can start getting ready for Ascension service, and I also want to make a video for tonight. So I want to thank all of you for coming out, for hanging out, for spending time with me. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to finally be able to hang out with you guys again. It felt like torture last week not being able to live stream. So I'm really, really glad to be back here. Can you imagine if Malema gives his heart to the Lord? I pray for that. Thank you, Stefan, for your work. Mulmar, I never want to pray for our corrupt leaders but I always remind myself I must, right? I'm called to pray for them. But there is a part of me that sometimes just wants to go, Lord, just punish them. Just punish them. And not for the things they did to me. I get angry for the things that they do to others. You know, the heartache and the pain that they create in others. That frustrates the living hell out of me. But then I go, Lord, give them insight, give them knowledge, give them righteousness, change their hearts that they will serve you by being good leaders. You know, it's a tough prayer. It's a tough prayer. 2 o'clock, Ramaphosa Q&A. Are you going to cover it? Is he doing a Q&A at 2 o'clock? A Q&A for what? Mm, it'll kind of be a first. He normally doesn't actually speak to the people of South Africa. He doesn't do interviews. I don't see anything coming up. Like I'm looking here. I don't see any streams coming up because Mr. Price Home kicked me out when I asked him. I hope someone asked Cyril where he gets those couches that have dollars in them. Trust in faith is one thing, placing trust in humanity is another. The history of the human race doesn't bode well. Take my hat off to all those who are raising children for a better future. Frank, how do you mean the history of humanity doesn't bode well? All I want for Christmas is a nice fat couch. Oh, yeah, I would love that too. That would be really nice, actually. I don't see any upcoming Q and A's. I didn't see anything before we started the stream. So I don't think there's anything here. I mean, if there is something, I'll watch it and then I'll tell you guys what he said. It might be tomorrow, or I might have misread SABC broadcast. Okay, pigs can fly. I will check it out, right? I'll check it out. Whenever he does it, I will be live and we will be covering that live stream. Because if I'm going to suffer through Cyril Ramaphosa speaking, I'm going to make the rest of you suffer for it as well. I'm sorry, but I don't want to listen to that guy speak on my own. It's a terrifying thing. He really annoys me. So it always helps that I can read you guys complaining about him in the chat. That helps me feel better about the suffering that I'm going through listening to the guy. But hey, we'll make it work. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I now want to thank all of you for coming out, for hanging out, for spending time with me. I will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. And yeah, hopefully we have an even better stream for tomorrow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy your Ascension Day. If you're going to church, I hope that it will be an amazing church service. If you're not going, I just hope that you'll have a wonderful day. And if I don't see you tomorrow, I will be live, but maybe you're not coming tomorrow. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Kimmy, how are you doing? As always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.